Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Midnight Club, Season 1, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately we pick up in the aftermath of the last episode. Ilanka is doing everything she can to resuscitate Anya, and it's like, wait, is this really how this is going to play out? But luckily she comes to, but then she sees her shadow and she starts freaking out. And Ilanka ends up finding out that Anya has a DNR, do not resuscitate. And for Ilanka, it's like, wait, why didn't anyone tell me that? She's like, as her roommate, I should know that better than I should know that. And it's like, it's this really heartbreaking thing because the whole point of coming to Bright Cliff in the first place is this is kind of like us kind of being able to go out the way we want to and being able to kind of go out on our own terms. And for her to have a do not resuscitate, it's like I'm going against her wishes, because like that's the point of us being here is to kind of go out in our own way, kind of not having to be surrounded by people who are just going to crowd us, who are going to pity us and all that. So I think for her, it's like I crossed the line with Anya, especially when Anya's always there for everyone else, once again, in her own way. And I think Ilanka felt like she failed her, but Stanton's like, do not resuscitate does not mean do not treat. And she's like, I think that even if you had known, you still would have done the right thing. And I'm glad you would have, because, once again, it's about, God, what was the wording that Stanton used specifically? Agency. It's supposed to be like the thing of just kind of, is the word that she uses, where it's just kind of like, there has to be agency. Like, this place is supposed to give you agency to kind of, I think, just live your life at kind of like whatever pace you want to and just kind of go about it the way you want to. And basically saying, a life is precious in this regard. So it's like, it's a good thing that you did. Like, it might not sit, and Anya doesn't blame her later on. She's like, no, it's okay. It's like, right, you didn't know, and I'm not going to blame you. Plus, it's like, yeah, but what was it that you saw? And she's like, no, I'm not going to tell you, because obviously Ilanka's been seeing things a lot more than everyone else, and she was probably trying to compare notes with Anya, but Anya was like, no, she's too scared to talk about what she saw. So that's where things kind of end on that front. But there was this beautiful moment later on where Sherry ends up measuring her head, and you're like, oh, you're getting her the hair, because she made the whole point last episode that she wanted hair, and it took a week, but her mom like has like a wig person, and even shit, because I didn't realize that because I think they talked about Sandra's, but I don't think they ever talked about Sherry's circumstances. Like, oh, like she's like, oh yeah, my wig is like yours and my wig are like the only other ones made by this, what was it, Molly Blake or something like that. And there's someone, and Alonka's like, wait, this is my wig, and it's like, yeah, it's yours. I was like, that was, and also like her later on getting I would assume it's supposed to be a PlayStation 1, and I mean maybe it was a 2. I don't remember which one it was that I think it was a PlayStation 1. I think in my head I was thinking PlayStation 2. I don't remember the time frame and stuff. It had to be a PlayStation 1 that he was saying that he was never going to be able to get, because the box definitely just said PlayStation, but he wasn't going to be alive long enough to get one. And Sherry's like, yeah, my dad works in Japan, and like even Spencer's almost like, wait, what? It's like, because once again, they think her stories are so full of shit. So for her to not only give Ilanka a wig, but also give this gift, and it's like, that was actually, you're like, holy crap, that's super, super sweet. Especially on the day like this. And I think that's extra reason why she did it, because this is his death day. A year ago, he was told that this was going to be the day he died, and he's still here. And so he's kind of written out this speech, and he basically has Spence saying it. And I love at the same time he's mouthing everything and kind of reciting the same thing, because he knows it word by word, because he crafted these words. He specifically chose what he wanted to say, and these words have probably been rummaging through his head 365 days of like, this is what I'm going to say. This is what's going to happen. When maybe not the full year, but at least a good chunk of time he spent memorizing these words of like, these are the words that I want to hear. These are the words I'm going to say when I'm still here. He's like, this suit I'm wearing, it's never been me, but this suit was supposed to be the clothes I get buried in. And he ends up getting like a game or die t-shirt. this is more his style, and he ends up like they end up burying his clothes. It's like, right, saying goodbye to like that death day, like, yeah, because basically saying like every day afterwards is kind of a blessing, you know. It's like, I'm still here, so I'm exceeding the expectations of what people kind of had for him. So I thought that was so interesting, and especially like him getting like close to Natsuki, who apparently like stayed in her room because she says like Stanton classified her as having clinical depression, because her mom didn't really think much of it. Her mom thought like, oh, it was just me like trying to get attention, thinking that it was just kind of a phase I'm going through after my dad died. So it's like, okay, so she is like clinically depressed. And so because I think you would have never really known that about Natsuki. I don't know if I feel like this is the first instance of that really showing up, and maybe like some of the stuff with Tristan kind of like plays into that as well, but because I don't think you would have assumed like she would have, but I mean, I guess that's also like like some days she's probably better than other days, essentially. So, Amesh made that whole point of there's two things in this world he wants to do. He wants to get the girl and save the world, but he doesn't believe like any one of those will happen. And like you could tell, it's like, okay, like kind of leaning into the whole him and Natsuki thing, but like both of them just kind of sit there. So we end up learning from Ilanka, her and Kevin talk about Bright Cliff's like history, that basically cults have been a thing, especially at the height, like in the 20s and 30s. But basically, he talks about the Paragons, and it's about this girl. The book is actually a journal written by a girl who goes by the name Athena, who ended up escaping the cult. Turns out her mom started the cult. It was basically, she tragically lost her husband to sickness and like her son to polio. So she's someone that kind of leaned into the more naturalistic like healing processes. That's why like it was almost like a yoga before yoga thing that she was kind of leaning into, like meditation type of thing of like, you know, having more natural healing processes. Even her name was kind of taken from like the Greek goddess, was it Acesso or Acesco, essentially the Greek goddess of the healing process. But the problem is she became darker and more obsessed with it and started going in a more cultist route when she started implementing, like eventually they got up to ritual sacrifice, and Athena wasn't all about that. So she ended up getting the police involved, because it's like, right, she wants her mom, because her mom wouldn't back down. And it's like, oh, something big is coming. So by the time Athena like ran away, escaped, because she left with all of the children as well, by the time the police came back and found them specifically in the basement area that the Midnight Club would meet up with when it was Julia and them, and that our characters discovered at the end of episode 3, but kind of explored a little bit more last episode. It ends up turning out that she was the only one that survived. Everyone else died, and she said it was an accident. She picked the wrong berries, but Athena knew that that was BS. She knew that her mom 100% did that on purpose. Made a sacrifice that the gods could no longer ignore when you like sacrifice that many people. So the end result is no one knows like whatever happened to her, whether she ended up living a longer life because of it, and no one knows what happened to Athena because like she went like, because I think both of them ended up going by their real names and kind of disappearing, because all they have is like those fake names that they had used. So my immediate thought was like, okay, we're going to, because especially when the Paragon was brought up to the lady from the woods, like had a certain reaction to it, but also Stanton. So I'm like, are we going to find out? The fact is that no one's had this place, like, because that all went down in the 40s. It's not until 66 when Stanton bought it again that this place was basically brought back to life. So I'm like, could it be, she would have to be Athena, wouldn't she? Like, I would assume so. I wouldn't think that's her mom, but I would assume Stanton's actually Athena, because the way the hearing Paragon again, like, really made her go, like, kind of like, I don't know what that is. Like, she like had a very distinct reaction that we as the audience saw that Alanka didn't. So you knew she was hiding something. So we'll know for sure if we check out the back of her neck and she has the hourglass tattoo, because that ends up being the symbolization of the Paragon like cult. So we'll find out if that is the case or not. Then you had later on like Alanka finding herself in that situation again. She found that like old lady watching over Anya, and now part of me is like, not less that's supposed to be Athena's mom or something like that, haunting this place, or like, who is that lady? What is the significance? Still unclear. And why is it that Alanka's the only one who ends up seeing? Like, everyone else has their experiences, but Alanka's is very, very specific. She had the dream about the cultist, like the Paragon, potentially. She also had a dream about, she's been seeing this old lady. She's also, like, been seeing the, Bright Cliff shift into, like, kind of go back in time a little bit. Which is very befitting considering the story of See You Later that Amish is up for. And so it was a really interesting story. You know, it's like, yeah, he wants the girl and wants to try, wants to or at least like the time that he's trying to get the girl, and he's on his way to destroying the world or something like that is what Amish was saying, because the character in this case is Luke. So Luke is into Becky, but Becky already has a boyfriend. Then I kind of was like, hey, when he ran into Vincent, played by Roy Quill, I was like, hey, it's like, once again, I shouldn't be too surprised, but I wasn't sure if he's going to be in this or not. But I'm like, once again, when Mike Flanagan like likes people, I think he's one of those directors and creators, like when he likes someone and like kind of brings them into his circle, it's like, oh yeah, like I'm going to work with you as much as possible. I'm always going to have some idea of like, yeah, I have a part that I think so and so would be good for. So I thought that was actually pretty dope. So I mean, once again, they've at least worked together, like, 4 times? Because I think he's in, was it Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, this, and then, like, the next thing he's working on, was it the Fall of the House of Usher or something like that, I believe. I think he's also in that too, I believe. Either way, so Vincent, like this, like, well-known programmer and stuff like that no one's ever seen him before, and so he shows Luke this strategy game he's making called Decision, that basically is like, okay, basically there's all these like weaponized satellites that are being put into space. So you have to determine from the very beginning, well, how many do you want to put out there? And so it is a strategy game of like, right, it's response and react type of thing of like, okay, you make this decision, all right, this is how other people respond, how do you respond? And it's basically about like, cool, when it's all said and done, like it turns into sadly a nuclear fallout situation that ends with the destruction of the world. And Luke, no matter what choices he ends up making, it's like right, this game is impossible. Then we meet Kara, his kind of girlfriend. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then the way she was looking at Luke, and Luke was almost like immediately smitten by her, you can tell. And he's like, man, dude, like, forget the games and stuff. Like, you've won in life, dude, with Kara. And it's like, is she your girlfriend? Then there's the whole satellite thing. Obviously Amish bringing a lot of reality to this. I mean, and this episode really leans into like, yeah, everyone. I mean, that's the kind of point. Everyone pull. I feel like this episode really leans into it the most, that everyone pulls from their own story. It's like, right, that's what you have to your point of reference, you have to kind of pull from to kind of tell the stories that they're telling in the Midnight Club, right? So his character has a bad heart, where for him it's like a disease is eating his brain. So not 100% 1-to-1. But then like things got weird when like Kara started like the whole encounter she had with Ray. I was like, oh, that's weird. I was like, wait, are you trying to like act like a wingman? I was like, are you gonna try and break him and Ray and Becky up just so that he could be I'm like, what's, and Luke is there to console her and everything, and it's like apparently like Ray was like, no, like nothing ever happened between us. I was like, oh wow, so nothing actually even happened. It's just that she's trying. I was like, what was the purpose of that then? And then it wasn't till later on when she was telling her story, I was like, no, you can't. Wait, I was like, wait, is this what, it's a time travel story. Well, to some extent, I was like, wait, what? I was like, now in retrospect, I was like, well, I was like, the hairstyle and everything, you look, I was like, are you supposed to be an older Becky? I was like, wait a minute. I was like, is Amesh supposed to be like, is Vincent supposed to be an older Luke? But I was like, no, they have different accents. But it's like, if you do notice later on, Raul Coley does do like an American accent when he's talking, like when Vincent's talking, well, quote unquote Vincent is talking to Ray later on. So I was like, oh, like he did that to disguise himself even more. I was like, that's fascinating. But basically, because the moment she start talking about her story, because we know that Ray, it's like, yeah, Ray's the kid that eventually could become like some very like high political person because of the family comes from. And then the moment she's like, yeah, like he met like the youngest son who could be like a New York person and eventually like a New York senator or something, but eventually became president. I was like, yeah, to me that was the moment I was like, oh my God, like you're Becky. Because, like, basically the way she was describing her, like, her husband without, you know, like, talking from it from a third-person perspective, I figured, I was like, you're talking about Ray. I was like, that's interesting. So, basically, she talked about her friend who had, who died at 33, who had a heart condition. So, when it was all said and done, it turned into a nuclear warfare situation, and Ray didn't pull the trigger because she pulled him back from it, but that didn't stop things from going off. And by the time he decided to fire the missile, it was already too late, you know, because they were in a satellite at the time. And so you cut back in between that and Luke, like, playing the game. And then, like, because he was upset with the ending that Vincent made, because he's like, yo, like, oh, were those aliens or something? Which I love. Sandra's like, wait, were they angels, those bright lights? And it's like, oh, but there's, what was it? The, Illumini is the name that Kara had given them, you know, quote unquote Kara, Becky. And so I thought that was so interesting. And she came back in time. Well, they came back in time because the Illumini gave them a second chance. And they found themselves here, and now they could stop the end of the world from happening. So for her, she believes the only way to make that happen is Ray. But Ray's kidnapped Vincent because he believes, like, no, I need to find Becky. He's like, she wants to blame me for everything, but it's her fault that it all happened. So both of them are trying to kill the other, thinking it's going to have ripple effects and change the outcome for the fate of the world. But for Vincent, it's like, no, I came back in time to change me. Because it's like, wait, because he was hired to write the program in the first place. And the whole point of this game that he's helping Luke with, it's basically like, oh, the only way to beat the game is to not play the game. And in this case, not even make the game in the first place, because he got hired by the Department of Defense to make this program. And that's kind of eventually what led to the downfall and the end of everything. As he kind of put it, it is, human strength meets human weakness, being like humans, the capacity to make these powerful weapons of mass destruction, but the weakness of humans of like feeling the need, having to use it, and, you know, not having the strength to like not, you know, go down that route, like our own, you know, our pride, our hatred, or maybe just like kind of the more negative qualities of human, our weaknesses coming through and making us pull the trigger on these weapons in this regard. So the whole point of the win the game, how you beat it, is like you keep, because it never crossed Luke's mind to ever start the game off by being like 0, because like the last point he got in the game was like, he's like, there's no game over, all he got was the bright lights. And it's like, wait, that's the point of the game. It's like, right, because that's when everything starts over. So now at the beginning of the game again, he ends up choosing 0 weapons, and that changes everything. So like, yeah, don't make the program, but she wasn't sure that things were going to change. Sadly, Ray ended up killing Vincent, and but Vincent died believing, like, no, I know, like, Luke has changed. I've changed the future. So he died, you know, for the second time, but this time he wasn't afraid, because he knew, he just felt it inside of himself that that his younger self had changed because of this experience. But Becky wasn't convinced of it, so she decided, like, no, Ray has to die. So she tries to kill Ray and ends up killing herself. You're like, Jesus, that's, I was like, oh, the timey-wiminess of this. And still, she's, like, hurt because of, well, her younger self is hurt, and now she's trying to choke the life out of Ray as she's vanishing from existence, and Becky dies. And you're like, wow. And that experience changed everything. From that point on, Luke never did make the program. He ended up living a life of, a stable life, never doing too much to ever affect his heart. Because he's the only one that knows the truth. Ray completely changed because of the experience. He still became president, and I think him and Luke became friendly because of that whole situation. So it's sad how it all worked out. And Luke ended up living his life, and then check the satellites and stuff one random Wednesday. Well, it's not just any Wednesday, it's the day after his 33rd birthday, the day he was supposed to die, and he's still alive. And he believes that, the Illuminati, maybe they weren't aliens, but they were humans. Maybe they were angels, and maybe that's all angels are a second chance. I was like, honestly, that is beautiful. It's a heartbreaking story. Natsuki agrees, but it's it was a beautiful sentiment. It's just I do like the thought of what is an angel, but just kind of because religion in particular, I think is all about it should be about second chances and stuff like that. So I thought that was beautiful, but I also love Sherry being wow, Sandra passed out. It's cool. After weeks and weeks of angel porn, and now we get a story that actually works with angels, and she slept through it. She's gonna be so pissed with herself, So, but Natsuki didn't like that ending because she's why didn't you put them together? Why didn't they get together? He was yeah, you write what you know, right? So, but Natsuki ends up kissing him, so it's right, what that looks like going forward, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But when it's all said and done, Ilanka had made her way back to Anya's room, and Anya had, pissed the bed, just because of, and she was embarrassed to leave me alone, and Ilanka's shut the fuck up and let me help you. And she's I killed my parents. You're okay. So it's it's not a directly I killed my parents, but I feel responsible. So, and now once again, everyone pulls from their own circumstances, but we really this episode really showcases that even more so, because we find out a lot of Dana's, a lot of the story from the two Danas, episode 2 comes into play. Obviously the whole ballet thing for her, once again, you pull from what you know. And her parents abandoned their lives and moved to the States for her, for the sake of this whole ballet thing. But I forgot what it was. Basically, she kind of went down the darker route. She would sneak out all the time, and her parents got into an accident on black ice trying to come after, looking for her, and they died. And she had a really good friend, Red, who was her best mate, who no longer is her best mate because because at the time she got hooked on heroin, which we know, once again, it's just that when you hear Anya's story, you can see the parallels that with the two Danas, it's right. So she went down the other Dana route to, I think that's probably based on her own regrets, wishing that she hadn't, obviously in that case, she had made a deal with the devil. In this case, it was a situation of, I wish I had just been the Dana that I was before. I wanted to kind of party and stuff like that, and that kind of ended up being an issue, and she ended up going down the other Dana's route, kind of that dark road, getting addicted to H. I can only assume heroin. But her friend tried to tell her, oh, you need to get to a rehab, and she was so upset. He got her, this ballerina, figurine or whatever. She tossed it at him, and, that was the last time they, after that, he kind of left her life. And then, I think she said, maybe 2 months later, she ended up getting diagnosed. And she was the same leg that broke on that ballerina is the same leg she lost. And now she recognizes what that shadow was, the thing that she was so scared of, the thing that, it's coming after you. And the moment she's saying all that, I was it's death. It's that's what it represents for her. It's I don't want to die. I just don't want to die. She's scared. I mean, every one of them is scared. Once again, it's just everyone's just been handling it in their own way. I think with just everything going on, having died and come back, I think it did it is a different because she also hasn't talked about what she experienced in that time she was dead, because some people were oh, I saw a bright light. Once again, I think it's the most scary thing. I mean, some people have that very nihilistic point of view of just being yeah, the light shut out, it's pure black, that's all it is. I'm I think that's too depressing. I'm I want there to be some form of afterlife. There needs to be. Just it can't just be like, the lights are out and that's it. Like, once again, if it's like a supernatural, like heaven, like in the show Supernatural, especially the way it is at the very end of the series, then I'm down for that. But it's like, I don't know what I believe. I don't know if I do believe in a heaven or hell. I want to believe that, I think the thought of, I don't know. I want there to be there's certain aspects about the whole like hell aspect of like what qualifies you going to hell. If you were like a god awful shitty person, yes. But like there's other aspects, once again, the whole thing of like, oh, you commit suicide, you're going to hell. Like I don't like that notion. So like there's some aspects about what, at least in Christianity or maybe Catholicism specifically, what the notions of hell I don't agree with or like about, but whatever. I'd want there to be some afterlife or something, but like the fact is Anya hasn't said anything. Part of me wonders, could it be that there is could she have seen nothing but darkness? Because she doesn't really talk about what she might have experienced. Because the whole point was, because she's the one that was steadfast of, if I die, I promise I'll make it a clear signal. Which I should also talk about because of the whole like, Elanka told everyone what she saw, the lady standing over Anya, the older woman. Well, Spence actually admitted, like, yeah, the thing he experienced last episode. And they're like, well, what do you think it was? And he's like, well, Anya would tell you, like, if it was a sign, like, wouldn't they have said something more than just Spence, So that's kind of where things kind of stand on that front. But especially that conversation, Anya, out of anyone breaking down in her arms, Elanka looks at the book. It's like, no, because Kevin was like, oh, what are you going to do? Like, with its like book and stuff. It's like, no, she's going to do the same thing because, obviously Julia left this place cured, but that's the thing. Like, we don't, because I think that's Elanka's journey. She's going to try and not just cure herself. She wants to cure everyone there, like her friends. She wants them all to have their second chances at life, their second wins. But the fact is that who knows? I mean, this could always follow Athena's mom's route, like, because we also don't know what Julia sacrificed, the price to pay. And especially considering, it's interesting too, considering like what's kind of like, she was already feeling this, but like, that situation with Anya really pushed that forward. And what ended up happening in Anya's story, once again, the two Danas made a deal with the devil, and it always comes back to bite you. So I feel like there's a parallel that can be made in this regard of the route that Elanka's about to go down. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.